Hi everyone, welcome to Real Science Challenge. I'm Kent Louie, science teacher and talking head, broadcasting from beautiful Vancouver, Canada. Now, how many of us have done this experiment before? The paper airplane experiment, where we get students to fold a paper airplane and see which one travels the farthest. Now, it's one of those simple activities I know many science teachers do to teach scientific method, and that students of all ages can do. So today I want to share what I'm doing with the paper airplane project with my students to get more out of them, more creativity, more opportunities for learning, because the paper airplane experiment is a great opportunity to use design thinking and to test things rapidly. Now, long story short, to get more out of students on this project, I set limits to the project, I make prototyping a requirement, and I assess and assign marks to the process. I'll dive a little deeper into each part, but before I do, handouts for this episode are available at realsciencechallenge.com EP35. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. The challenge I give my students is pretty simple. Fold a paper airplane that can travel the greatest distance when thrown. However, through this project, I can get a lot out of my students in terms of learning and assessment. One way to get students to be more creative about their paper airplanes is to set limits. Now, some of the limits I set are taken from the Red Bull paper airplane competition. And yes, it's a thing. And these rules include folding a paper plane on the day of the competition with paper that I supply. Only folds are allowed. So there's no glue, no tape, no cuts are allowed. And you need to throw the plane down a hallway and release the plane from behind a starting line. Now, these limits force students to be more creative with their designs, especially since they can't tape or cut or glue their planes. They need to experiment with different folds. And students also need to be more creative with their throwing, especially since the hallway has a low ceiling. So students can't just throw their planes the way they would throw like a baseball outdoors. Now, another thing I do is I require students to create and test multiple prototypes over 2 or 3 weeks. In design thinking, this is known as rapid prototyping. And through rapid prototyping, students really get to understand the problems with their planes and to develop a greater number of and better solutions to these problems. Having students make just one plane or giving students just one period or one day to complete the project is not enough time for students to do a deep dive into what makes a paper airplane fly far. We don't want students to just make any paper airplane, which tends to happen if we just require one prototype, but requiring 3 or 4 prototypes gets students to try new ideas, fail at some of them, and learn from their failures. Finally, I assign marks to assess the process. For example, if I want students to make one prototype a week, I assess each one of my students' prototypes. I record how far the first prototype built in week 1 went, and I compare that to how far the second prototype went in week 2. And I assess for improvement. If there is a 25% improvement, then students may get a 1 out of 4, or an emerging. If there's a 50% improvement, then that's a 2 out of 4, or a developing. And 75% is a proficient, or 3 out of 4. 100% may be extending. This assessment prevents students from just constructing anything for their prototypes and really requires them to put some real attention on their prototypes, which will only help make their final product better. I also require students to write a brief report for each prototype, and I assess the distance that their final prototype travels. So in all, I have at least 5 marks taken from this project, and those marks are directly related to science and engineering practices. That's it for this episode. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you're doing in your classroom or what you'd like me to share for next time. Speaking of sharing, please share this video through your network, and also please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Handouts, once again, are available at realsciencechallenge.com EP35. Thanks for watching, and let's talk science again soon.